Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of ancient maps that show Antarctica before it was covered in ice. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 1929, Turkish naval officers discovered a map drawn in 1513 by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. It depicted the coastline of South America with striking accuracy for its era, but it also showed something at the bottom of the map that should not have been there: a southern landmass. Charles Hapgood, a professor at Keene State College, examined the map in 1966 and made an extraordinary claim. The southern landmass on the Piri Reis map, Hapgood argued, matched the coastline of Antarctica as it exists beneath its ice sheet, a coastline not mapped until a seismic survey in 1949 and not known to European explorers until 1820. If Hapgood was right, someone had mapped Antarctica before it was covered in ice, implying an advanced civilization in the deep prehistoric past. American military cartographers compared the map to the 1949 survey and sent Hapgood a letter of agreement. Was this the smoking gun of a lost civilization, or one of history's most persistent cartographic misreadings? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the wider world of ancient technological anomalies, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Ancient technical knowledge is remarkably vulnerable. It lives in the hands of craftsmen, in the minds of engineers, in the institutional memory of workshops and guilds. When a civilization collapses through invasion, plague, climate change, or internal conflict, that knowledge can vanish within a single generation. There is no guarantee that what is written down will be preserved, and much ancient knowledge was never written down at all. It was transmitted orally, apprentice to master, in a chain that a single catastrophe could permanently sever. This vulnerability helps explain what might otherwise seem impossible, that the ancient world possessed capabilities we did not recover for centuries or millennia. The Romans knew how to make self-healing concrete by mixing volcanic ash with seawater. When the empire fell, the recipe was forgotten. Medieval European builders worked with inferior materials for over 1,000 years before the technique was rediscovered through analysis of surviving Roman structures. The knowledge did not disappear because it was suppressed or hidden. It simply died with the people who held it. Apply this principle more broadly, and the anomalies of the ancient world become less mysterious, not in the sense of being explained, but in the sense of being plausible. If Rome could lose a concrete formula for a millennium, what else might have been lost? What might advanced cultures in earlier epochs have discovered and then lost, leaving only fragmentary traces? A strange artifact here, a suggestive diagram there, that later generations would struggle to interpret. This is the question at the heart of every anomalous discovery from the ancient world. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding ancient maps that show Antarctica before it was covered in ice is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Piri Reis drew his map in 1513 and inscribed it with notes acknowledging his sources, which he stated included charts from Christopher Columbus, Portuguese maps, and approximately 20 older maps of uncertain origin. The map was found in 1929 in the Topkapi Palace Library in Istanbul during a catalogue of the collection, and attracted immediate scholarly attention for its accurate depiction of South America's eastern coastline. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the map displays a large landmass running along its southern edge, which Hapgood identified as Antarctica in his 1966 book Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. He proposed that the map copied from ancient source charts depicting Antarctica as it appeared before accumulating its ice sheet, a process he dated to approximately 4000 BC, requiring a pre-ice age civilization capable of global maritime exploration. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Antarctica was officially discovered in 1820, independently and roughly simultaneously by British, American, and Russian expeditions. The continent's actual coastline beneath the ice sheet was not mapped with any accuracy until a comprehensive seismic survey was conducted in 1949 as part of geophysical research. Hapgood compared the Piri Reis map's southern landmass to this 1949 survey and claimed correspondence. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, in 1960, U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Harold Z. Ohlmeyer wrote a letter to Hapgood stating that the southern portion of the Piri Reis map did appear to correspond to the Queen Maud Land coast of Antarctica as shown by the 1949 seismic profile. Hapgood cited this letter extensively. Critics have argued the comparison was methodologically flawed and that Ohlmeyer's letter represented an informal opinion, not a rigorous cartographic assessment. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain with eye. In the accepted framework, these are not fringe commentators, they are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of Piri Reis himself explained his map's construction in the marginal notes. He described collating approximately 20 existing maps, including several attributed to the era of Alexander the Great, Columbus's maps of the Caribbean, and Portuguese charts of the African and Asian coasts. The compilation process involved combining maps of different scales and projections, which inherently introduces geometric distortions. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The concept of a great southern continent, Terra Australis, was a fixture of European geographical theory from ancient Greek times onward. Aristotle and Ptolemy both postulated a southern landmass to balance the northern continents. This theoretical continent appeared on European maps routinely from the medieval period through the 18th century, often labeled Terra Australis Incognita, without representing any actual survey data. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain ancient maps that show Antarctica before it was covered in ice. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Hapgood's ancient sea kings hypothesis. The map's southern landmass derives from source charts made by an advanced pre-ice age civilization that possessed maritime technology sufficient for global exploration and accurate surveying. Hapgood proposed that Antarctica's ice-free coastline was mapped around 4000 BC, passed down through copying across millennia, and eventually reached Piri Reis. The main objection is that no other evidence for such a civilization exists in the archaeological, genetic, or geological record. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the southern continent on the Piri Reis map is a distorted representation of South America, the mainstream cartographic interpretation. When maps of different scales and projections are collated without a common reference system, southern continents become smeared and displaced. Paul Cowell and other professional cartographers have demonstrated that the map's southern landmass fits South America's southern tip, not Antarctica, once projection distortion is properly accounted for. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the Terra Australis Convention, cartographers in 1513, routinely added speculative southern landmasses to maps based on theoretical necessity rather than survey data. The Piri Reis southern landmass may simply be the conventional Terra Australis, included by Piri Reis from theoretical sources rather than empirical charts. This is the simplest explanation and requires no anomalous source material of any kind. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding ancient maps that show Antarctica before it was covered in ice does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes professional cartographic analysis by Paul Carl and subsequent researchers has shown that when the map's well-documented geometric distortions are corrected, ions arising from collating multiple maps of different projections. The southern landmass aligns with the southern coast of South America and Patagonia rather than with Antarctica. This analysis has been reproduced by independent cartographers and represents the consensus professional cartographic assessment of the map. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented. Hapgood's comparison relied on a letter from Ohlmeyer that has been disputed as a methodologically informal assessment. The comparison between the Piri Reis southern coastline and the 1949 Antarctic seismic profile required selective matching, choosing areas of apparent correspondence and ignoring areas of clear mismatch. No independent cartographic authority has replicated Hapgood's specific comparison and found it valid. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed Piri Reis explicitly documented his source maps, none of which he identified as predating the classical period. No source map from before 1500 BC has ever been discovered, and no pre-Columbian document of any kind has emerged confirming maritime knowledge of Antarctica or the southern polar region. The chain of custody Hapgood's hypothesis requires ancient charts surviving through millennia of copying has no documentary support. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding ancient maps that show Antarctica before it was covered in ice. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Mainstream cartographic historians reject Hapgood's Antarctica interpretation of the Piri Reis map, considering the Terra Australis Convention and the South America distortion explanations fully sufficient. Hapgood's maps of the ancient sea kings, published in 1966, remains influential in alternative archaeology literature and continues to be cited in popular books about lost civilizations. Gavin Menzies extended similar claims to propose pre-1421 Chinese global exploration in his 2002 book, also rejected by historians. The Piri Reis map's genuine historical significance is as a record of early 16th century European geographical knowledge, and as evidence of how rapidly cartographic information spread through the Mediterranean world after Columbus's voyages. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of ancient maps that show Antarctica before it was covered in ice, from the historical record, through the physical evide, NCE, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Piri Reis map ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.